So this is basically the state facility planning process for 2018 training, and we'll introduce ourselves first, starting with Dave.
Dave Webb, Construction Management.
Cameron Wales, Construction Management.
Good morning, Brandon Finney, Planning and Finance.
Amber Leach, Planning.
Troy Decker, Planning.
Charlie Kaufman, Planning.
Okay, so again, rules of the engagement here. Just raise your hand, and I'll unmute you, and you can have a question at any time. You can get in here and ask questions. So Mel Muldrow also walked in, so he's joining us this morning for at least a little while here, according to how much time he has to make available.
Yes, I am.
All right. So let's just start with some history. The school facilities side of this agency has been doing formal facility planning for about 11 years. And then as we merged last year, we went ahead and started a facility planning process that's more formal with state agencies and entities. And so what that's enabled is clear communication, and also to have kind of a formal process of face-to-face and make sure that we capture all the important things related to taking care of your buildings in the long run. This process also aligns the appropriations request process for school districts, state agencies, community colleges, University of Wyoming, the commissions associated with each of those, governor, select committee, joint appropriation committee, etc. This means that all requests are made no later than the middle of May, and so we have the school districts on the front end of this, usually from first part of middle of January through about end of March or so. We try to get the state agencies done from April and a little bit into May, and then basically what we're trying to do is align budget requests up to make recommendations. This agency is responsible for compiling all budgetary requests or needs, and then funneling them through the state building commission, or funneling through the school facilities commission, and then through the legislative process. So I was going to have Brandon just join us for just a second in an explanation of how he's been working with the state budget office, and then a little bit on timing of how this is different from the past. You guys used to do submit things at a later time, and then in the fall it would be due and stuff like that. But now it comes in earlier, and there's a reason for that, and that's why we're doing this in April and May.
Sure. So to start out, the basis of what made the change was Senate File 92, passed in 2016, and what that did was it created the State Construction Department. In order to get the budget process aligned, everything had to be submitted to the governor by the end of August. And what we did was a timeline of all the budgets that had to be submitted in IBARs. We saw that there was a need to adjust the schedules in order to meet that requirement. So what we do is we do facility planning, which will be completed in May. In June, we will capture all those projects requests that come through. We have a template that we'll go through here in a little bit and walk through that. They'll all come through in a systematic format, and then in July we'll prepare that, and it goes to the State Building Commission for approval. Once that's approved, those projects that are promoted on will be submitted into IBARs by August 15th by our department. The budget office will then have from August 15th to August 30th to do their thing, and off to the governor it'll go, and which will be August 31st. So in the past it was I think October for state agencies to go to the State Building Commission. Since the change of the legislation and the new process to get everything to the State Building Commission, to get it to the governor, the time schedule has been adjusted. The pro to all this is that it has one consistent format. We have everything itemized in one CapCon IBARS budget book. They're broken into specific categories. And the ultimate goal is we have a nice deliverable, not only for the governor, but for the legislature, with clear communications, so that these projects have a higher probability of getting funded, and everybody's on the same page with them.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Next thing we want to talk about is schedule. We do have pre-meetings, we have final meetings, and then we actually have the large group meetings. And there's a reason for that, but our pre-meetings are going to start March 12th. pre and final meetings. They're going to start March 12th, end about April 19th, and then our large group meetings where everybody's around the table, everyone from the agency that you guys want here, the state construction department. Those begin April 9th and through the 26th for the most, and then we have a little bit different, we have a wait for community colleges and UW. Those are going to be in May because of other timings with what they need to do. So with that, I'll have Amber talk about a little bit about pre-final and large group meetings and why we have these meetings and what her role is in those.
Thank you, guys. Earlier this fall, I sent out a schedule for the actual facility plan meeting. From when you confirmed that, we were able to set up a pre-meeting and final review. The pre-meeting is at least 1 month in advance. This is the time that I work with you one-on-one to go through the documentation. We do it as a video conference so that I can show you every single document, answer your questions, walk through AIM, the database, and show you how to get into it, access it, and any other questions you have. Now, we do follow up with this on a final review 1 week prior to the facility plan. We want to have all documents done prior at the final review or before the final review. This gives me a chance to put it together, us to walk through, evaluate, and make sure that everything is the way it needs to be so that when we walk into the facility plan, we can stick with the actual facts and don't have to worry about coming up with details and any other information. It will be all available in front of us for the facility plan. So those 2 meetings prior to the facility are very crucial in terms of getting our information ready for that actual meeting.
So Amber, also, as you do a final meeting in preparation for the large group meeting, Amber also, once that's finalized, she'll forward it to whoever in this organization has a role in that so that they can preview, we'll look at it, and it helps us prepare to have a really good conversation with you during your meeting to optimize communication and make sure we really can focus on those important things rather than all the little details with regard to databases and stuff like that. So with that, then, I'm going to look over here to Charlie Kaufman, and he's going to talk about a little bit about the AIM database and really which is the foundation of what we're doing in this organization. And so he's going to talk a little bit about the AIM database and where we've been, where we're going, and why we're doing what we're doing.
Absolutely, Troy. So at the beginning of all this, we had an assessment with FEA done in 2015 that helped put the majority of the state-owned buildings in the system at that time. Along with that, they were able to take a category or they cataloged all the state assets in there with the systems and the CRV values with that are now located in the AIM database. With that as well comes a deferred maintenance value, which helps us understand where your buildings are at and what needs to be fixed and remedied in these buildings. Where we're headed right now, currently we just have the property profiles and location reports in the database, and we are looking to head to getting all the condition scores for each of the systems that are currently not AIM. We're looking to get those implemented into AIM, and then eventually head to have all the capital work orders and major maintenance work orders flow through that as well. So that's kind of where we're heading at with AIM at this point. But the reason why this is important, location reports, we're looking to find ways to be able to match up square footage for major maintenance costs to get more accurate. So we'll be doing that, looking to do that at a location area for that so we can get it more accurate. And for deferred maintenance, getting those totals into AIM will help us be able to prioritize projects in the future.
So in layman's terms, we have an actual property profile for each of your buildings as a whole, and it has details of address. Within that, it breaks down each space within your buildings, what its use is and stuff like that. And then, like Charlie was saying, what we're going to be doing is confirmation of spaces and usage of spaces with regard to major maintenance categories, that from the database we'll be able to then calculate your major maintenance payments right out of the database with confirmed usages, square footages, etc. So you guys will not have to be providing that kind of information anymore. It'll actually be within the database. It will be all those spaces, of course, if they're not measured yet, will be measured, stuff like that. The other thing that Charlie's going to be doing as we move on into the summer and fall, and that is that in our property profiles, we have a lot of your buildings that have been measured and assessed. But for the state to know the inventory of what really the assets are on the ground, we're also going to be adding and confirming all your other buildings. So you may have secondary buildings that we're not going to spend money to assess, but they may be storage, they may be small storage or little warehouse or sheds or whatever.
And so this is meant to be a comprehensive database, and so we need to have a comprehensive inventory of all the buildings that are within the state right now. One of the things we didn't do on the beginning part is we have not reached out to the smaller buildings. And like Troy was saying, we won't assess them, but we will have them for our records.
And then the other thing too, for planning purposes, as for those that are measured, and there will be floor plans, visual floor plans, color-coded floor plans probably, that give, maybe not color-coded like the school district side.
It'll be just a floor plan, a basic floor plan identifying all the spaces.
So each space will have a room number applied to itself, so that as we're working through facility planning, we have a common document to look at, reference, and as discussions go on with which part of the building needs help or where the issues are, we can identify those. And then talk a little bit, Brandon, on the financial aspect of, I know you touched a little bit on the chart with the financial aspect of the database and look how it relates to the state agencies now and their facilities.
Yeah, so another thing on the AIM process is we're working on implementing one financial system. We currently had, when we came into the state construction department, agencies 06, which is A&I construction management, and 027 for state construction or school facilities. What we're doing now is we're going to create one financial system, so when the appropriations come available in July, we'll be able to set those appropriations up in the accounting system and then track those projects that were appropriated by the legislature and also report back in a systematic, so it's the same consistent reporting on the financials, and it represents the state construction department as a whole to the legislature.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I did bring up the AIM database. We have kind of two sides of the AIM database. There's one for school districts, and then we have this mirror image almost, you might call it, for the construction management side. And so within that, and as we go, we're building this database, which takes several years, maybe more than just several. And so within that, we were talking about the property profiles are here, location report, which is really a space-by-space usage and identification of major maintenance categories and so on. We've got some things for health in here, work orders for GSD, things like that, and then facility plan report. So one of the things that we really try to work hard on, and that is giving you guys the opportunity. You may be, last year, most of you were brand new to this process and actually access to the database. And so we have, and this will go out in an email from Amber, but it'll also be within your facility plan itself within AIM. And so we've got a visual step-by-step process. You know, here's login, stuff like that. If you need a login, of course, we will get you one, or if you need additional logins, or if you have someone who had a previous login but they're no longer part of your organization, we want to make sure that we take them out and they no longer have access. So anyway, it is a web-based application, and you can go in and then you can log in, and then we have just step-by-step visuals for each part on how to check in, check out documents, what you do at any juncture within your facility plan, and what we're anticipating you providing. I'm just moving down through this really quickly. You should all have it 100% now, I'm sure. All I want to do is show this as an illustration of what you can reference. Perhaps you're the kind of person you'd rather just get in there and start clicking. Or you're the person that reads every line of every word in order to know what's going on. So this is a resource for you, and we will continue to use it so that you can reference it. And like we said, on the construction management website will also provide this webinar in video form so that you can review that, or if someone in your organization really should have attended either the Wednesday or today, this morning's webinar and they weren't able to, they can come back and watch the video and get the same training, and we will send out a link to that, Amber will, along with the instructions. So with that then, I just wanted to bring you into your facility plan. When you do log in, you enter the facility plan module, and you can just leave statuses. And as we build this, we'll have 2 or 3 or 4 years in arrears of history. One of the things that happens in school districts and state agencies is changeover of personnel. And so it's really important if you want to reference last year's facility plan, I'll just pick on A&I here for a second. You would choose A&I and notice there's a 2017-18. The only ones you will not see here actually right now is the DOC, Department of Corrections. We've actually, they do have some sensitive data on there because they are a penitentiary type of system. And so they actually have, you won't be able to see that in here. They have their own particular login to protect their data. But everybody else, 17, 18, log in here. And if you, in the new one in 2018, it's not ready yet. Within the next week and a half or so, we'll have all the documents loaded up. So don't go in here and start pulling stuff yet. As soon as your documents are ready, both Charlie and Amber are finishing up the details to your documents, and we'll be loading these in the next week and a half. And then when Amber contacts you and says you got the green light, then that's when you can start checking out your documents. So right now, this is just an example one in A&I in 2018, but I wanted to go back to the 2017 for just a second because this is what your facility plan module is going to look like in AIM. And it will have multiple documents in here, and those documents we will be talking about this morning. So with that then, I'm going to go directly into the facility plan. We've kind of created a little bit of a mock demonstration of an example. Obviously, state statute requires a process by which facilities' needs are captured and then prioritized and brought before the State Building Commission for consideration for recommendations, and eventually the governor, and then through the legislative committees and process. So when you get this, it will be pre-filled out. I just made an example here of agriculture. Yours will be within your facility plan. It will have your name up there. And then the pre-meeting date, Amber will fill out. The final meeting date, which your documents are ready, and this is really an important span between these two. I think it's 2 weeks or 3.
It's about roughly 2,
Okay.
right at 3 weeks, because the 4th week is your facility plan. So 4 weeks.
Total from the pre-meeting to the actual meeting.
Yes.
So we give you about a month, and again, Amber's going to, as soon as yours is ready, if you want in early before your pre-meeting and you've gone through this process and want to start working, she'll give you that green light and just wait for that green light, and then you can start. You can come in person. A lot of state agencies come in person, but also video conference, or you can do both. Let's say you have people here in Cheyenne or near Cheyenne. You want to come in person, be around the table face to face, but you have some satellite offices around the state, but important personnel that should be a part of this. Instead of having them travel 7 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours one way, you can actually have them video conference in. We're going to video conference these anyway, whether or not you have someone outside or not. But just let you know, then you can do one or both or either. Down here then, when you get these, you fill in the directors. So who is going to attend this meeting? And we highly encourage directors, deputy directors, your key facility personnel to attend these meetings. You can see over here that we have basically, here's our who are anticipating on a regular basis. However, some people here will not be able to attend. And so, but right now we just have them in there. On the day of the meeting, if someone's unable to attend, we'll remove their names. If on the day of the meeting someone else shows up, we will add their names. So you also have other, and for other, you know, whoever it is, if you have some other person in the facility that should be a part of the facility plan, okay, just whatever you want to do, type their title and then their name here, and away you go. So you're going to add those. So this is, like I said, this is a formal process. We're trying to capture things in writing. And then as you fill these out, we really want to encourage you to really spend the time, proper spelling, grammar, clear communication, be succinct in your communication, and make sure that you fill that well. Think of potential audiences that may look at this. Legislators periodically want to see a facility plan. The governor has called over to our office to ask for facility plans in the past, and we have provided them, the governor's office itself, these things. So this is really a bird's eye. It's about at a 100,000 foot look. And what this is designed for is if someone who doesn't know a lot about your organization but want to know about the facilities within your agency or entity, it would give them a really, really solid understanding of what the needs are, who's involved, and what has been recorded and talked about, probably within about a 5-minute scan of this document. And so it's a real efficient way to communicate. And then it gives you assurance that at the very end we're going to be talking about signatures. It gives you assurance to know that what you've communicated has been heard, it has been understood, and then any questions, concerns, or whatever will be finalized during the meeting when we meet face-to-face or on video conference. You'll notice on each of these sections as we move down through, there's always an entity note and an SCD note. And so when you guys, as you move through and you check something or you have comments or important things to communicate, these entity notes are really important. And so you will be typing here. If there's nothing to say, you don't have to type here. You can hit return. You can form paragraphs. And what we do is we'd recommend, like any good communication, make it organized in such a way that it clearly communicates what your needs are, what your concerns are, or ideas. So let's pretend that for instance, that you don't need any land acquisition, but there is land disposition that's going on, you would check it. If it doesn't apply, you do not check it. Land leases, so let's look, and let's say you have land leases. Do you have any land leases on state-owned building with a state-owned building on it? Yes or no? And so this is important because as the state of Wyoming invests in buildings, if they're on leased land, we want to make sure that the term of that lease is sufficient to cover the capital or major maintenance investments that would go into that building that would justify the expenditures over time. So that's what this is about. If you don't have a building, a state-owned building on leased land, you say no and you move on. You don't even have to do any notes or anything. If you do, you would check yes. You would put the building number. If you don't know the building number, we do. Talk to us. The name of the building, the year it was built, and then the lease expiration date. So that's an important part of the process. During the meeting, when we meet face-to-face with you or on video conference, we will type notes in this section. And so we'll do our thing here, you do your thing on the top, and then you will always see our notes. We will actually do the notes, finalize them, and send them back for your review before you put your signature as head of that agency or entity. The next one down is property profiles. We talked about that. Basically, that is your buildings within the AIM database. We will put your, we just captured this as an image, and we actually put your buildings on here. Now, last year, again, was the first year. We made some corrections, but addresses are important, those kinds of things. Date built is important. If we have something on here and you're missing a date built, we really need you to come back and provide that data in some way, shape, or form and research or whatever it takes. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of what your inventory is, along with square footages. It's important to know these square footages. If it is a major building and it has been assessed, these square footages are off of actual measurements by an assessment team. And so we don't have to go through the process of really verifying those square footages. unless you see something completely just strange and you have some questions and we can go through. There are a few instances, I think, this year on school district side where if there has been some kind of a modification to a building or something and we need to remeasure, then we can talk about doing that down the road here or maybe at the next assessment. So again, these numbers then are for the majority, if they're a larger building, they are directly from a consultant going out and measuring buildings, so we don't have to relive that. But we do want you to look this over, and if there's any concerns or thoughts, type them down here in your notes. State-owned buildings, the state is seeking opportunities to fully utilize owned buildings in order to eliminate leased space. We hear this at SBC almost on an annual basis. And the question is, do you have some excess space in any of your buildings? And what we'd like you to do is identify the town building and square feet that would be in excess. If you have a building, now I think that A&I here has a pretty good handle on what's going on. And so A&I, you may be the exception to this because I know that you have a much more thorough process in regard to your responsibilities. But you could probably list some of the, maybe the, if you do have something where a building could potentially not be leased anymore, but that agency or entity could move into a state-owned building, this may be a great place to put that and give a summary real quick. If you don't have excess square footage in a building, then just hit no and move on. The other thing I'm having Amber do this year is, let's say for instance, and we just put Cheyenne in here, but if you put yes and you identify a town, let's say it's up in, I think last year, I think we had an example of Newcastle. We had a state-owned building that had some extra square footage in there, and we have some other entities or state agencies within that town that are actually leasing space. So if you have a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot space that may be able to be used by the state and get out of a lease, and down here what she'll do is you hit yes, identify the place and location and the square footage, we'll take and we'll actually insert after you identify that, we'll insert any leases, and these are provided by Daniela Lucero, and we'll just put those in here, and then we can see basically what that need is or who's leasing, and maybe we can have a good discussion. And that's all we're doing here is we're saying, okay, this organization is responsible for state-owned buildings, and so can we move out a lease and go into state-owned? So help us with that.
And please know that during our pre-meeting, I'll probably be pretty active in trying to get that information started so that we can get a head start on developing what is in the spreadsheet and pretty much pull those towns.
Okay. So you would like at least during the pre-meeting to know that they may have some potential free space within a building. If they can identify that on the front end, it'd help you then provide for this and populate it. Okay.
Troy?
Yep.
The smaller buildings, I noticed those aren't listed on there, right? Are we trying to encompass those within this?
Oh, I cut this off.
Okay.
There were so many.
Okay.
Yeah, don't. What I did was for illustrative purposes. There's a lot more in Cheyenne, and so I kind of truncated it as an example that wouldn't be overwhelming to everybody. 3 pages long. Yeah, good catch. Okay, leased buildings. Insert leased buildings here. So we are going to insert all your leased buildings that are associated with your agency. Now, our purpose here is not to do A&I or general services job. Again, Daniela is doing leased buildings. What we're doing here, all we're doing here is we're just showing in a bird's eye view for this agency that we have property profiles, and here's the ones that are owned by the state. Here's the ones that are leased, the properties that are leased within a single document. So we are not managing the leases. We are not correcting the leases. We're not updating the leases. If you have corrections or changes, we certainly want you to note them here. But you will work and call directly Daniela to get those updated. So, and this is my understanding, the latest version we have of her. So look it through and then give her a call, and then you can list them here for illustrative purposes. But again, we're not handling the leases themselves. We're just trying to capture in a bigger, larger picture, trying to capture data that would give a holistic understanding of that agency, both lease spaces in a visual as well as property owned by the state. One of the things that the state auditor's office is responsible for each year is to report any building that has physical damage that restricts occupancy in a portion of a building or as a whole due to significant unexpected damage. So simple question, do you have an impaired building or an impaired area of a building, yes or no? If it's no, move on. If yes, identify clearly what those impairments are, the spaces or whatever, and that would help capture that here. Is your space adequate, yes or no? Now notice that this is kind of breaking across pages and stuff. As we type notes and stuff at the very end, we'll do some, we'll kind of get the page breaks correct. Right now, I mean, until we finalize this document face-to-face or in video, we'll just let these slide from one page to another and they won't be quite as pristine. But is your space adequate, yes or no? There are uniform standards for space sizes for office and stuff like that, so please reference that. But if you're having space challenges, you can mention them here. We'll talk about those with regard to facility planning. So be clear and concise. Condition, like owning a car, there's a life cycle or a lifespan or a life expectancy of buildings. And we just want to continue to put this forward for us and for everybody out there in the state agencies. Want to make sure that we understand that preventative maintenance / routine maintenance, major maintenance, and capital funds are an important part of the life cycle of any building and preserving those buildings and improving those buildings. And this kind of shows that progression from a brand new building. Major maintenance kind of kicks in as it ages and needs are met in an intermediary or intermittent type of way. And then capital funding occurs for major renovations or replacement buildings as the building really becomes a lot older, or if capacity drives or lease space, they're trying to get rid of lease space and build or take over buildings in order to put state employees in and functions. This is a really important part of this year's facility plan meeting. And so we really ask you to spend some significant time on this. Routine preventive maintenance program is an important part of the discussion at the legislative level. And they, specifically the Joint Appropriations Committee, there was inquiry about state agency maintenance programs. And so their concern and their desirous to know, are we taking care of the buildings that are out there? Because effective routine maintenance can reduce the amount of future major maintenance and capital requests, obviously. And so what we need you to do is we need you to describe your program up here in kind of a succinct, clear way. What maintenance program do you have, not major maintenance, but preventive maintenance or routine maintenance? Describe that in a paragraph or two or a short way, but be thorough, put in what you need, but make it as succinct as possible and clear. Now you may want to do these first and then come back up and fill the program in. And so what we're going to be doing is, because we've had inquiries at the legislative level, we're going to be, and I don't know exactly what Mel wants to do with this data yet, we're just providing a platform for communication. But what we'd like you to do is do check boxes, and then we can, by agency, we can actually record, here's their maintenance program, and we can capture it in a clear and concise way that communicates clearly to perhaps legislative bodies or commissions. So what we want you to do down here is, do you have, is your routine maintenance performed by, okay, that's going to be checked, I hope, by everybody. Do you do it in-house, or do you have it contracted? Some agencies may have a combination thereof. If you're across the state, you may contract routine maintenance in some of your facilities in a maybe a rural setting or a different setting, and it may be in-house at some of your other buildings. But so it can be one or the other or both. And then down here, what we'd like you to do is you would say, you could say whatever, routine maintenance, performed by, and you can actually just, do your thing down here with, whoops, I'm sorry, you're right. I missed that. Right here in your notes, say routine maintenance. So if there's something to explain here that you feel is important, talk about the in-house maintenance or the contracted maintenance down here in your portion, and then do a return and then talk about the next one. So again, just provide information there. So for this case, I'm just going to pretend like yes, we do routine maintenance, and we do it in-house. Okay, written or digital procedures or processes. Do you have the written or digital procedures or processes for your building interior, building exterior, maybe your HVAC and your grounds? Don't know, but you guys can check one or all of those that are associated with what's happening with your buildings. Maintenance schedule. Do you have a maintenance schedule documentation on a daily basis? Do you document it weekly, monthly, yearly? And perhaps for some of you, you may have documentation on your schedule. Maybe there's some yearly maintenance that you're doing that's scheduled, but you also do it monthly or weekly. So again, use the combination to clearly communicate what you do. And then the second layer here on this one, maintenance schedule documentation, is your documentation handwritten? Is it spreadsheets? Or is it maintenance software in some way, shape, or form? So provide that. And if you check one of these, again, on each of these, just go down here, break them out, and kind of describe that just a little bit. If you have a maintenance software, tell us what kind of maintenance software you have and explain that a little bit. And then, so that pretty well captures this in kind of a check type of system that we can capture it in a really organized and concise way. Again, your program, when you describe your program, it's more overall what your program look like. You don't have to repeat all these details. This is more a description of your program as a whole that helps this department and legislators know what you do in a larger picture. The State Construction Department has requested funds. Okay, so this portion down here, we have actually requested funds, and it's still in there, Brandon, right? In the bills working through.
Yeah, actually we've got $95,000.
Okay, so we have some money to put on some facility management training for school districts and state agencies together. And so we have 48 school districts. We have at least around 14, 15 agencies right now we're working with, and we have money for training. And so what we're asking you to do is, instead of us going out and pretending like or envisioning what you may need or may not need, we're asking you what would meet your needs best. And so which option below would most likely allow your maintenance personnel to attend? So this is really a question of the upper management of your agency, your director and stuff like that, but you really need to involve your facilities management team in order to fill this out. So what would allow you, we're not going to hold you to this like you're, swearing that they for sure will come, but we're really trying to help you take care of the buildings that you're in. In that case, then, we want you to, and it might be a combination thereof, if you think one event, okay, single events, one event in a central location, I should say, a conference format over several day period, probably Casper, that would allow a broad spectrum of topics and larger stakeholder attendance. So you may have several hundred people there from school districts and state agencies, and it's really a broader spectrum of training. And it could have some pull-out sessions. It could have large group presentations on multiple topics. It could have vendors, those kinds of things. If you think that would meet the maintenance personnel needs best, And that doesn't mean just maintenance personnel can attend. Obviously, you know, directors and everybody involved in your agency that this would be valuable. We can provide that and plan it for a central location and basically make it a very large event. Now, you may feel that a single day presentations held within regions that allow local or near local training on individual topics with smaller stakeholder attendance may be better for you. We do respect the fact that you have budgets, you have restrictions, stuff like that, maybe availability of time. And if that one would be the better of the two, then do it. So for instance, you could have one here in the Cheyenne area that this region, you know, clear up to the, you know, Goshen County and maybe over to at Laramie, stuff like that. They could come in and maybe over in Pine Bluffs area or whatever. I don't know where all the state agencies are. But anyway, that might meet your needs best. One or the other. And then list the topics. This is where we're going to have you kind of work on it. List the topics that would best meet the needs of your personnel. So we're going to actually have you not only tell us about that, but then we want you to think what topics. Maybe it's maintenance of boilers. Maybe it's how to take care of a roof. So you tell us 1, 2, 3, 4. What are and list them in priority. You know, what are the topics that would best meet your needs in training? Here's some additional notes you can put in. Okay, down to capital construction. One of the things that's really important, and I'll have Brandon talk on this, and that's reversion of funds.
Yeah, so one of the things we want to do is just keep tight books and make sure we appropriate or revert funds when it's the appropriate time. Obviously, you'd have a lot of the main players here. You'll have directors, facilities directors, project managers from the construction management side. So this would be a time just to review the projects. If it's complete, truly complete, then we would revert the funds. If there's any things outstanding or it's in its middle of its warranty phase, you know, then we just leave funds. But we got all the right players at the right time, and it's time to comb through the books, see what's available for reversions.
Now, don't feel like we're trying to push the reversion of funds in such a way that is premature. We just want to have a clear communication between all the parties and make sure that if there are funds out there that can be reverted to meet other state needs around the state, that's what we're trying to do. So this is now part of the formal process. FCI list. Your agency or entity has an FCI list. It will have, this is just an example, livestock board. I kind of chose a short one right here, kind of truncated it. Your highest need building as a whole, these FCI numbers, it's called a facility condition index number. And what it's based on is an assessment team went out, scored all the systems within your building, and those drove a certain deferred maintenance value. And those were accumulated into a single FCI score that basically show you what is your worst scoring or your highest needs building with regard to deferred maintenance. And so this will put your highest deferred maintenance in a building as a whole on top down to the lesser ones. So that just helps you overall see the condition of your buildings as a whole. Capital requests, so we want to be very, very clear on this one because we don't want to miss any opportunities. If you have a capital request for the State Building Commission to consider, okay, we want yes or we want no. If no, no big deal, work down through it. If yes, check it. And then down here, you'll double click. This is basically a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet embedded into the Word document. You will put the project name, whatever that project name is, and then over here you will click and upload. Now this, you will say yes, these should all be yes, because we're talking about a budget narrative. Earlier, Brandon talked about where he's been working with the budget office, and they have an Amber or Brandon, you can talk about the age of their I-bars and the importance of this. But there are basically a couple things. We have an I-bar form, and either Amber or Brandon, if you could talk about this I-bar form just a little bit, because if you have a request in capital needs, this is the form. This will be in your facility plan module, and this is the form you will check out and fill in. And then in just a moment, I'll talk about the details of this form, but let's talk about the overall understanding of why this form and only this form.
Well, just to reiterate a couple things is to create consistency, uniformat document that's the same for all agencies. As Troy mentioned, the data that IBARS uses, it's like a 90s, early 2000s software. I would say it needs a little facelift or update. It's not the best tool. So one thing they have is the font. Everything's structured here. We work with the budget office so that the font, the layout is all exactly how it needs to be so that it can be put in there easily, comes across in a professional manner, since we're working with an old quirky system. So it also has the funding sources, and I'll let Troy go into the process of how to fill it out. But in here, I want to click on the form, the funding sources. So once you fill out your narratives and all that, you can click in there so that the math automatically calculates for you. One of the problems that was when we worked with the budget office, they said, well, a lot of times things come through and the math doesn't reconcile appropriately. So we added features such as this.
So again, a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet embedded into the Word document. Just double click into it. You can get going. On the funding source, you'll put your funding sources down here. Maybe it's not 100%. Amber, anything else you want to add?
If you have any difficulties, Tamara and myself will work with you on breaking it down on funding sources if you have any questions.
We want to make sure that they know it's for those that are for authorization only also. We
Yep.
need to include those.
So we are here to assist you on this in the process, but like anything else in the form, we're trying to streamline it and not recreate the wheel where we can cut and paste it right into the next database, which is the IBARS. And that's why we like you to keep the fonts the way they are, with it being Arial and number 10 font size, because that's the only one that it accepts, and then that will make it a lot easier, so we're not recreating the wheel, and it's going to go a lot simpler. And then we can focus on other material that needs to be brought into it.
So how you assure that the font and size is correct is simply to highlight and start typing. That's all you have to do. Don't change any of that font. Same down here. If you're explaining it, you just start typing, do your thing. And that's all you have to do is just fill them in. These are self-expanding tables here or entries, so you can type your heart out. Now, obviously, there are certain criteria that you want to do here, and that's the next part of this that we want to talk about. Down here, by the way, you'll go through A, B, and C, and then down here it says recommendation. The green ones are in this office use only, We'll do that internally. You don't have to go past C. The first person that will talk to you about this is Amber during the training. She'll make sure if you do have capital requests or approvals, what do you call them? Authorizations, that will identify those on the front end. These are due in your final meeting, okay, prior to the group meeting. Not later, but with. This is part of your documentation. That's why on the actual facility plan itself, these need to be yes if you have any authorizations or requests, and this needs to be yes. And then, of course, Amber's job is to make sure that you have filled it out and that it's in the AIM database. And then all of those will go through Tamara, and she will actually get in the AIM database. She will know exactly how many you have, if you have any. She will check that out, double check, and make sure everything looks great. She'll check it back in, and then by our group meeting as a large whole, then we'll be ready to, these will be formalized, and we won't have to spend a lot of time on them because we did that during the preparation stage. And so again, the timing of what you do here is very important up to your facility plan meeting, and everything we want complete when we meet as a group, not afterwards.
Please understand that the budget narratives are the exact wording that goes into the budget book that is presented for legislation. and beyond with the governor looking at it and other legislators. So please understand your audience of who you're explaining this to.
Okay, so we also have instructions on this one. So we talked about the fact that these literally go into a budget book or recommendations, a packet for SBC. They actually see these forms and read through them. So you want to be concise, you want to be clear, you want correct spelling, grammar, very good communication, and you don't want to be very wordy. You want to say just what you need. And I mean, in my job, just like all of us, if I have 5 paragraphs and I have a whole booklet of 80, 90, 100 pages, okay, those, like anybody, they're looking for key information as quickly as possible to understand what you're asking for and why you're asking for it. So clear communication is really the objective here. So with that then, and I talk about this within the headings, you know, those kinds of things, complete ideas. So in that form, each of the part, like the title of project, I walked with Tamara, and she kind of walked through some samples in the past of what these look like. And what we're having is an inconsistency of information to legislators. And so what we want to do is make sure that we provided you, like in the title project, here's what we need. You should identify your agency or your entity, whoever you are, okay, should be identified in that title. The location of the project, it's really important that if this is Newcastle or Cheyenne or whatever, the actual name of whatever the project is. Sometimes a name hasn't been, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's a building that is going to be named later, but it has a working name. Maybe it's a, you know, maybe it's a community college that has a working name, like it's going to be a science building, but they haven't named it after anyone yet. So if you don't have an actual name to the building, do a working name that gives a clear understanding of that project. And then the activity. You know, make sure that you identify, yeah, we're interested in building a new building, okay, or an addition to a building, or a total renovation or partial renovation. Maybe it's an addition plus a partial renovation or a total renovation. Demolition, replacement, upgrade, etc. That's pretty well your title. And then when you get down into the form and you start explaining that, so that was the title portion right here, and you start filling out the explanation of the project, we've provided, and these are, by the way, these are a combination of experience of construction management and how they have seen these come through, and what best communicates is they've communicated to SBC, but it's also a combination of Brandon and Amber working with the budget office, because Laura over there, when they receive these, okay, they want quality information that when they put in, there's no questions of what the project looks like and what you're asking for. And so it's this ultimately ends up at the budget office, and these have been seen by them, and I don't know about approved, but we gave them opportunity to give us input. Since they receive them all across the state, you know, and now all you agencies are flowing through this agency, wouldn't it be great if we did our job really well and made their job a lot easier? And that's what our objective is as they communicate and put into IBARs. Explanation, you want to be succinct in your history, very short, brief, but complete. Who will it serve? You don't have to have all these, but these are just ideas. In your explanation, you know, tell who will be served by the construction or whatever your activity, design, or whatever. Spending authority, that's what Tamara just talked about. Identify within your explanation, are you asking for spending authority or are you asking for state funds or a combination thereof. A breakdown of the project scope. Maybe this is phase 1 or 2, I don't know. Maybe the cost of the project, the square footage. Maybe you're doing a, you know, 7,000 square foot addition and you're renovating a partial renovation of 3,000 square feet. Maybe the elements or the systems are going to be touched, etc. That could be a part of your explanation. And then priority. Maybe you have a lot of priority. Maybe you have 2 or 3 requests or 2 or 3 priorities. Who knows what they are? But maybe you need to identify them in order of which is the most important to you as number 1 and 2. In colleges, we had kind of an interesting adventure this week or this year, in colleges, in that the community colleges, not only did they have a present matrix that put scores on present requests, but they had past requests. And so the governor and SBC were wondering, well, we see that these are ranked, but how does that tie in with your past requests that maybe haven't been funded yet? So perhaps, the priority in relation to last year's priorities or previous year's requests as well. So think about that. Then we talked about that object code portion in here, which is right here. And again, Tamara, you can talk to Amber and Tamara both, and Tamara is obviously the most experienced in this, and if Amber cannot answer something as a prelude working up, she'll work with Tamara, but again, Tamara is the expert in the office. She will be finalizing these and making sure they're done right. And so that needs to be, we just put some information here. Perform justification, then the last one you fill out is justification. If there's a statutory reason you're asking for something, identify the statute and why that statute applies to this request. Maybe there's some financial implications. How will it affect or benefit the recipients? I think the legislature is particularly sensitive to, what does this look like to the taxpayers if I vote yes on a project? What's its value to the state of Wyoming when this money is either approved or funded as a spending authority? So that's an important part. You talk about savings, ongoing maintenance costs, who knows, just examples. And then opportunity. Is there an opportunity or risk here? Maybe there's a safety issue, a health, maybe building integrity. Those are important things to put in your justifications. And then educational objectives. If it is something that has to do with educating or training, maybe there's something like that. These are just examples. Please feel free. And then that last portion again, leave them blank and we'll fill those out. That's all I have on this one, but I think it's an important part that we're trying to really bring in and hone in and refine so that the process, we're trying to make sure that what you communicate is clear, what we receive is clear, what is passed on to SBC is clear, and what goes on to the budget office is in a way that makes it a very efficient process for them to be able to put this in with no unknowns or missing information.
Let me just make one comment. Just to follow up on that, just make sure that you're still, for the CapCon and the major maintenance piece, make sure you're still working with your project managers as you're preparing these documents so that when those documents come across, the PMs are aware of what you're submitting and all that ahead of time so they can help you write this if you need to. So.
And I would say also that if you have a level 1 on some of these requests, that you need to include that information within AIM so that we can look at the backup.
Okay. With regard to major maintenance, here's the definition of major maintenance. And so as you start considering major maintenance requests, it's important to make sure that it qualifies. Again, work with your project manager. A lot of you may be very experienced at that and know what qualifies and what doesn't qualify for major maintenance. We will, within your facility plan, we will list, some of you are much longer again. I just kind of chose a short one for illustrative purposes. These are actually, this is called an FCA, not an FCI. So this is actually facility condition assessment, building by building, system by system. And so in here, there's actually, for instance, Law Enforcement Academy, Firearms Range, exterior windows scored a 3. Each of these means something. A 1 is failure. The lower the score, the more deferred maintenance related to it. 1 is failure, 2 is poor, 3 is fair, 4 would represent good, and a 5 would be the best score you can get as excellent. What we're trying to do here is we've really called this a low condition scores list. And then, Charlie, I forgot to bring this up. Where do we have that spreadsheet for the condition scores? Right. Yeah, all of them.
They'll be in their facility plan module.
Okay, can I get one out of here?
Yeah, so I go to agency.
And
this is gonna be a complete list. So,
Okay, I want a short one. Oh, wait, just on this one again.
it's fine.
Okay, I forgot to bring this up. I apologize. Just a little bit of a delay, but within your, so you're going to have your low condition scores inserted into your facility plan. Let me bring that up again. So this is your facility plan template. We'll have kind of a capture of your low condition scores. But within your facility planning module, within AIM, there is going to be a spreadsheet that has all your condition scores for every building, the 5s through 1s. And the other one, if you only had a couple 1 or 2s, then we include 3s. If you have a bunch of poor and failure, we don't include your 3s as spare. So we kind of try to keep you looking out in the future, what is your lowest ones? So depending on the building and its scores. But the interesting thing here is when you go into this, if you want, this is a really important tool for you. So let's say you're doing whatever. Let's go the training tower for a second. Did I get that or not?
I think you took it off.
Here, I'm fine to, that's good. Okay. So we're in a single building, I believe. Yep. And then what you can do is, if you want to see just your 1s and 2s, or maybe you want to see all of them, you can select whatever you want to look at. So for instance, maybe I just want to look at my 3s, or maybe I don't want to look at any blanks. If they're blank, that means the system was not present. So I'm going to scoot out. Now I can actually see only the systems that have scores. And then let's say that for some reason though, because your major maintenance request should, at least to some degree, correlate to the condition of that system. And what you'll probably want to do, not always, but you'll want to try lacking health or safety issues or something unexpected, you'll probably want to be looking at your lowest conditions and how do I solve that first with my major maintenance, and prioritize your lowest condition needs first to optimize your major maintenance to make sure that your buildings are maintained as best. So that's one method or one suggested opportunity. So looking at this, this is a 2. What you can do is you can actually click in here and you can actually see why the assessor scored it a low number. In this case, this Academy Corps, in this case, this building for floor finishes, and basically they scored it a 4. And then right in here, the notes, there's a lot more thorough notes in here. This is just an example. They said, hey, listen, your carpet needs replaced, basically. And so on the notes section, that can be a really good tool for you. In this case, since we have a bunch more 3s, maybe right here we can look at these notes. I just double click, and it says, why is this just a fair condition? 4 metal pedestrian doors and frames in fair condition. So you might want to be, and you guys are experts at your facilities, you know what they are, you might want to be concentrating some major maintenance on those 4 metal doors that need some help. Maybe they need to be replaced, and so on. The other opportunity then is the recommendation actions. The assessment team also went out, and I don't know in this building if we have any of those. It doesn't look like we do. There are oftentimes, especially 1s and 2s, there will be recommended actions. Not only will it tell you why it was scored, what was scored, but it will basically say this is what the recommended action is in order to remedy it. So that's a tool for you as you look at your major maintenance. Okay, also within your facility plan module, there is going to be a spreadsheet that is for major maintenance requests. And within that spreadsheet, it's going to have, this stuff will not be filled out over to the right. So everything from, everything, this will not be filled out. The only things that will be in there is probably your agency, and you'll just have to fill out your what the building is, what your priority is for a major maintenance request. You want your number 1, 2, 3, just put 1 on top, organize them. And then we just talked about condition scores. You go find the system that's related to your request, and you put down the condition that's correlating to that request for major maintenance. And then you're going to describe the project right here. And then you're going to have a dollar amount. Now, yesterday or Wednesday when we met for the first webinar, we talked about, and Mel's not here, he had to leave, but the requested amounts are really important to be accurate. So I know your PMs are working with you, and I'm sure you guys have there are certain ways to get, sometimes for carpet, that's not a hard one to get to replace carpet. If it gets to a more, some major maintenance requests need design. Maybe you need a consultant, but work with your project manager to determine how best to scope out the project, to estimate the project, the budget the project, and then to put this number. So these are important numbers to have in here, and they need to be as accurate as is reasonable. One of the questions yesterday was, okay, I have a more complex one, and so how do I get that number, and can I use major maintenance to actually help estimate those? As you work with your project managers, they will help you determine that. But yes, Mel said yesterday, we do this on the school district side. If there's something coming down the road that you need help, a consultant or some help financially in major maintenance, please put your projects here in preparation for that. So, for instance, I don't know, we've got X, Y, and Z needs, and so we need some planning money to properly prepare the scoping document. As you work with your PM, there's an agreement on that. You can put in a project for scoping that project out, defining it, and then estimating it, and then your PM will help you put an amount that's appropriate. If you're looking at a project to submit in this facility plan, by the way, and this is for the general session, the supplemental session, if you're looking at a complex project and you haven't worked on it at all yet and scoped it out, don't bother, because you don't have enough time between now and April. It just isn't going to happen. But you can put in, so as you work on major maintenance, you need to look out 2, 3, even 4 years potentially and get a start on these things and foresee what your needs are, get the proper planning money in preparation of that if it requires it, and then start working through that process so that when it comes around to the next biennial budget or the next general session or whatever, you're able to accurately do that. What we won't, what we don't want to see in here, because it doesn't help this organization any, so when you have a final meeting, you have to have these numbers ready. If you don't have numbers ready by then it's probably something you probably ought to be thinking about the following year. If there's an emergency, that's a little bit different, and you can be talking about your project manager on an emergency. So make sure you have dollar amounts in there accurate, and the best way to do that is work with the project manager. Dave, anything else on that?
One thing I can say is that most of your estimates are from past experiences. So you're not going to go ahead and get engineering or architectural just to get these requested amounts. So you know there's still going to be a shot in the dark. So give it your best swag, but we got to realize in our office that that's just an estimate and that's a fluid amount. And we're going to move money within this whole form between projects. So it's good.
Okay. All right, any notes you can put here? We're almost done. Legislative session review. So I'll have Brandon talk about this a little bit. This is a little bit new for you guys, but we're coming out of the, and this is the final product. But we're going to insert in here kind of a budget dashboard, and it's going to describe basically by the time we meet with you, the legislative session will be over. And why don't you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, so currently it's changing by the day, so I'm tracking different projects and where they stand during the legislative process. But once it's done, I was going to finalize the table. We can identify which agency, what project they got, and how much money they got, so that we could just sort of discuss it and see what made it through the life cycle and what didn't.
So you'll know exactly, and I'm sure you guys are tracking those as well, hopefully, but you'll know exactly what was approved, what wasn't approved, and then where it kind of got shot down, or if it wasn't approved, at what stage. Supplemental budget, this is an older letter from the governor's office, but each year the governor's office talks about biennial or supplemental budgets or general session budgets. we just want to, and this will be in each of your facility plans, but I think it's the third sentence down here. Supplemental budget requests are limited to funding or needs critical in nature. So obviously during the general session, which is what this facility plan is about here in April for you guys, it is for critical in nature requests. And obviously there is a lot of scrutiny in that descriptor. And so if you have something critical in nature, if you're thinking something about the biennial budget, you can certainly say, hey, we've got some things we're thinking about, and we can talk about those for the biennial budget as we're looking forward. But these requests here are for the supplemental budget, critical in nature. Be aware of that as you move forward. Now, I don't know, like state parks, that's a flow through, right?
Yes.
And can they, with fees, can they request based on fees during the general session, or
They
is
can
that?
always request also. I mean, anybody can request
they
in
can
a supplemental if
Yeah.
if something that comes up.
Yeah.
But it's, once again, it needs to flow through the SBC.
And critical in nature. That's the thing. Okay, so just be aware of that on this one. Surplus equipment, Dell McComey, the director of State Construction Department, had me put this one in. And it's just a communication tool, but do you have surplus equipment that could be available for other state entities to use? Yes or no, and if so, what? I don't know how to define that for you, but you may or may not. But I know also that we turn things in when we're done to surplus itself. So, but I think he was just asking, and he asked me to put it in, so here it is. So, put it up.
If you've got some extra generators that are sitting around, you've used one of them and you never use a second one, I mean, put it out there so
Yep.
that we can share those.
Okay, and again, these are surplus building equipment. We're really we're focusing on facilities here. So that's that question. And then the last thing we do, and I think this is almost the last thing we're going to talk about, unique issues, ideas, and concerns. We recognize that even though we have a fairly thorough, topical format here for facility planning, there may be something that we didn't talk about or wasn't addressed in one of those categories above. And so we always give you the last word, the opportunity, or staff even here, to say, is there anything else that we need to talk about? So we end our meetings with that. Here's just our little fine print down here that lets you know that it's a snapshot in time, and obviously any requests have to go through a proper authoritative process in order to be funded. And then this is something that Mel had us add this year. The project manager who's overseeing your agency will, at the end, we send these through DocuSign, and they will be digital. So once we finalize our notes, stuff, you've seen them on the screen and stuff, we'll send them digitally to the project manager first. He'll put his digital signature on this, and of course printed. And then the construction management administrator that's either Jim or Mel. In Mel's absence, we'll do it. And then it'll flow to you last for an agency representative signature, and that will probably be the director of every agency. So those will be a part of the process as well to make sure that everybody saw what was talked about, felt that they communicated to the best of their ability, and acknowledged that what was discussed is as complete as everybody can think it's complete at that time. Okay, so I think with that then, and you guys have been a quiet little bunch, but I do appreciate your attentiveness. Is there any question that we can answer before we quit? Or if not, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. Okay, not seeing any raised hands. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to working with you. You'll probably be Amber will be contacting state agencies probably in about 2 to 3 weeks and getting you guys going and giving you the green light to start checking documents out. So with that, thank you for attending, and we will see you soon.